Tony Khan is always excited for the future of professional wrestling, but has yet to build new stars within AEW. Let's talk about it. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Square Circle Podcast with your host, Marie Shadows. And on this episode of the Square Circle Podcast for the ending of 2024, which is season 5, year 5 of the Square Circle Podcast, we're going to be talking about Tony Khan, AEW, my tweet that went viral again, and getting into more details about it. And also, we're going to be exploring the phrase that seems to be an AEW favorite and even some wrestlers' favorite phrase, and it is enjoy all wrestling. Stop me if you heard that before. I know I have. I've seen it in tweets. And even podcasters will try to stay as neutral as possible by saying enjoy all wrestling to their audience. And they try to make it seem as if they enjoy all wrestling and watch all wrestling. That probably gets exhausting, by the way. Sometimes as a podcaster, you should have your core beliefs that you sit on and not just try to play neutral. Because when you try to play neutral and just be on the fence and try not to offend your audience because you might end up losing some followers, losing some listeners, it's not healthy. If you engage in conversation that is constructive, that has truth to it, that has common sense to it, you will attract the audience that you want rather than trying to pull everybody from everywhere to try to get that clout, knowing that there will be a good number of people that will not support you. So I would say that podcasters going into 2025 to talk about professional wrestling, just start being truthful. Start saying what you're feeling. Start looking at things with common sense. Don't just try to be neutral and don't try to push the phrase of enjoy all wrestling. And that goes for wrestlers as well. Because for some reason, even though professional wrestling is hot right now, aka WWE, WWE just had a very successful Saturday night main event. That show was really amazing. The nostalgia was there. The feeling was there. I enjoyed it. The crowd was great because New York shows up and shows out every single time. So shout out to New York City for that, which I am a New York City native, just to put that out there. But that's neither here nor there. It's just that because wrestling is really hot right now, the biggest topic, other than talking about the business in a positive way, is to talk about AEW and all of the mistakes that myself and others in the wrestling community have been highlighting. Now, I will say that it is a matter of how you phrase things. If you are phrasing things with automatic cursing and name calling, you're not going to get anywhere. No one is really going to take you seriously. They're going to consider you a troll because right out the gate, you're being hostile for no reason when you want to try to get your point over. But in doing so, for some reason, you just want to call that person a dumbass or say, bitch, shut the fuck up, or just say some really heinous stuff. And it's like, why would you do that? I know it's the internet. I know you can stay anonymous, maybe to a certain degree, and you don't want to show your face and you want to be a keyboard warrior. I totally get that. I get all of that if you want to be anonymous. But why is it the first thing that you want to do with typing with your fingers is to name call somebody when you're trying to give constructive criticism or trying to form constructive criticism, but it doesn't come out that way. It comes out in a very, very hostile way. And then if people call you out on it, it'd be like, why are you being so hostile? Like, look at the way that you're phrasing this. It's an automatic self-defense kind of mechanism, and that needs to change. And I understand that that kind of reaction that I am describing probably pops up on a lot of wrestlers and ordinary Twitter users' timeline But I can tell you, and I will tell you over and over and over again, that you can tailor your algorithm to how you see fit. All you have to do is you can either block the person, mute the person, hit the three little dots and say, not interested in this post, and then click the middle bar that says to stop showing such and such posts on your timeline so that way you don't get it. You can also mute certain words. However, I will say that if you are mutuals with somebody that is always arguing with the person that you no longer want to see their post on your timeline, it's going to go through the algorithm and push through and it will pop up on your timeline. That's just an algorithm thing. Just because you have a mutual that is arguing with the person that you don't want to see the post to, there's nothing that I can give advice to on how to stop that, but to make your timeline better so that way we won't have wrestlers that emerge 6 months later to be like, oh my God, Twitter is such a cesspool. Twitter is so toxic. Like, I can't stand the IWC. The IWC is no longer the internet wrestling community. It is the I will complain community. We're complaining because we're seeing obvious mistakes. We're seeing things that are not connecting with us, the fans, because we are fans at the end of the day. Even though I have a podcast, somebody else has a podcast, someone down the block from me has a podcast, we all have podcasts. We all buy a microphone or not buy a microphone or use our phone to basically talk the talk for podcasting, and we all have an opinion, and while you cannot listen to everyone's opinion, it is there just for viewing and listening when you have the time. But at the end of the day, even though we are podcasters, we are still fans, and we're looking for that connection between our fandom, the love that we have, the fandom that brings us together in the wrestling community, to the company that we enjoy. However, if the company is not improving, people will call it out until it is fixed. And if it is not fixed, most people will move on to another wrestling company that they can form that connection with. This is why AEW gets called out a lot, because AEW no longer has that connection with the fans. Once we started seeing the domino effects falling by Cody Rhodes leaving first, Jade leaving right after, and CM Punk leaving, and then just all the baggage that has yet to really be taken accountable for and really tell the wrestling world that they're sorry, they're going to start over, and this is how they're going to start over with an actual fresh plan. There's a reason why people are leaving, because they're not getting that connection. Does that mean that you have to call the IWC I Will Complain as the new acronym instead of the internet wrestling community? Because I can tell you that you are grouping all of the bad apples and trolls, the true bad apples and the true trolls in the IWC. You're grouping them all together with the nice people that are in the community that want to see the community grow and thrive. You are grouping podcasters who have an opinion and constructive criticism and even have educational shows and live streams and does a bunch of stuff to show that this is where AEW is failing, this is where AEW can be, this is where wrestling can be, this is where wrestlers can start thinking outside the box. You're grouping us all together as if all we do is complain, but it's okay for you to have a fan podcast and be like, I'm a fan, so I can't be grouped in that kind of thing. I take no responsibility. I say what I say. I'm a fan, and everybody else is just complaining around you. And it's like, no. You can also tailor your tweets and what you see on social media too. I already explained that, but I will say it again. You can tailor what you see, and then you can follow people who have a really good head on their shoulders about the business side of things and the writing side of things and show running and directing and putting everything together to make wrestling possible, because wrestling is theater times 10. Wrestling is the purest form of theater, but for some reason, we all want to shit on it, but then be like, oh, I'm a professional wrestling fan. Oh, I'm this and I'm a fan of that and this and everything else. But we'll still say that the only people that hate professional wrestling more are the fans, which is like, what? It's acting as if like no other fandom in anything that we have created in human history is acting as if no other fan base is the same as the IWC, where everybody either argues with each other, there's some type of drama, there's some type of miscommunication, there's some type of misinformation. Like, all of this goes throughout all the fandoms. But for some reason, people within the internet wrestling community, the IWC, always wants to remind us that we should enjoy all wrestling, that we shouldn't criticize, that we should cheer on the wrestlers when there is no connection being made. If there was a connection being made between the wrestler and the audience, and there's no weird fuckery that goes on, meaning like they don't pull you out of the kayfabe reality, then we'll be golden. But because AEW is so far gone and wants to be meta 24/7 with everything that they do, which I blame the Young Bucks in hindsight about this, about being meta and breaking the fourth wall and having these edgy promos, MJF, having these edgy promos where it's like, it's in bad fucking taste. Okay? Bad taste. Now, let's go back to the original thing that I opened up with, that Tony Khan always says that he's excited for the future of pro wrestling. Well, how excited can you get for the future of pro wrestling when you are buying already established talent with like the endless amount of money it seems that you have because of your inheritance and because of your dad's money? And fans, that day when AEW did the launch for AEW All in Texas, for the launch of the tickets, and they had a press conference, that day was Defend Tony Khan Day. Because again, people got on me because for some reason, AEW fans and Tony Khan fans specifically do not want to be in the same reality that I am in and almost everyone else is in. And that reality is seeing this downfall in real time. I am calling out things in real time when it pertains to AEW and the New Japan Pro Wrestling partnership. Fans do not want to accept whenever I say online, because I know they don't listen to my content, that AEW, specifically Tony Khan, stole the New Japan wrestlers and didn't give New Japan Pro Wrestling any time to sort of maneuver their guys into the spots that were going to be available. And now New Japan Pro Wrestling is sort of still struggling, in my opinion. It's still lackluster. They're still doing small mistakes that I'm like, what are you doing? Where is the big stories? Why are we doing the push, stop, momentum? Why are we collaborating so much with AEW? Like, let that breathe. There are other people in New Japan Pro Wrestling that has yet to hold the never openweight title, that has yet to hold the Super Junior title, the tag titles, the IWGP, even though that's Zach right now, the NJPW TV title. There's just a lot of different titles that New Japan has. And it seems like the same rotation of guys. And I don't really want to single out Shingo, because I love Shingo. I love Shingo. Shingo is an amazing talent wrestler, and you will want him on your roster and around because he's a very good helper. Now, with Shingo, why did he need the never openweight championship title? Why is that the title he's always going after? It's always like the same rotation of guys. Another thing that happens between this AEW and New Japan partnership is that there are certain hot-shotted storylines. Like, all of a sudden, we're getting Suji versus Jack Perry. Like, is Jack Perry still part of House of Torture? Can somebody ask that to Tony Khan on the next media press conference? Because, man, I need to know if Jack Perry is still part of House of Torture, because I will tell you this. That is when my interest got back, because that was such a left field moment where Jack Perry comes in and attacks Shota Umino because Shota's a babyface and they're trying to build him up as a babyface, but then he's also getting boos now, and it's sort of like just a little messy. But going back to the original idea of Jack Perry being the scapegoat, and that could work, and that could like really have went far, but no, it's just now turned into, oh yeah, you're just nicknamed the scapegoat, but we know you as Jack Perry, and you're not even that intimidating, and okay, you know, what are you gonna do now? But then all of a sudden, he's fighting Tsuji. For what? What's the reason for that? This is why I don't like the combination of AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling as a partnership, because everything is from 0 to 1,000. Not even from 0 to 100. It's 0 to 1,000. And there is no rhyme or reason, and you can tell what is a Tony Khan booking versus a New Japan booking. Right now, with Wrestle Dynasty coming up in January, that is a Tony Khan production disguised as a New Japan Pro Wrestling pay-per-view, because it does not make sense. New Japan Pro Wrestling is very calculated with what they do with their tournaments and with their pay-per-views and how they space it out and who's going to be wrestling. You can feel that there is some structure to it. There is some tradition to it. But to have Wrestle Kingdom, to have New Year's Dash, to have Wrestle Dynasty right back to back to back, it is not going to pan out very, very well, and AEW is going to see this. Tony Khan wants to have all these achievements under his belt, but he wants to do it so fast that it feels like he knows the company is going to go down eventually, because you can't keep operating in the negative, and you also can't keep operating in the area where you're just getting by when it comes to making money. Now, again, I will say this because I said this online as well, that because AEW is an LLC, they are a private company. Nobody knows the numbers unless somebody leaks out a receipt that tells you how much they pay for the venue, how much they pay for this, how much they pay for that. And we have two pieces of evidence about that. The whole Nevada thing, when they spent like $1 million or more for that kind of stuff, and then another receipt for the small venue that they made like a couple $100,000. But because AEW is a privately owned company, they will not release their financials or the books. So if Uncle Dave is talking about how much money they're making, he doesn't know. And if he does know, he can't really report on that because it's a private company. He could get sued. Anybody could get sued by reporting on a private company. It's not like WWE that was forced to go public and to become a corporation. And because we know their financials, we could see how well they're doing in the green. The same way of Bushiroad, who owns New Japan Pro Wrestling and Stardom. They released their earnings, and yes, their earnings increased, but that doesn't mean that New Japan Pro Wrestling is out of the dark when it comes to needing a little bit more money and paying the wrestlers and doing all of this. There's a lot of factors that people do not consider, especially when they're online, because they all think that they are smart when it comes to financials and money of businesses, but they're really not, because they're not paying attention to all the other factors. They're just looking at certain tweets and being like, yes, this is 100% true, and I'm going to regurgitate it no matter if it's wrong or I'm missing any new kind of pieces for it. So just to wrap this little part up, Tony Khan is getting into something way too fast without really thinking about the long-term effects that is going to have on New Japan Pro Wrestling and in wrestling in general. Because another thing that goes on is that Tony Khan signs wrestlers that already know the deal, might have some type of TV experience, are ex-WWE employees, are stars already, they know how to get over. So he does not want to do the work that it takes to build a star. The wrestlers that came in are somewhat familiar within the wrestling space. And nobody really liked when I said that wrestlers have to sign their contract pre-packaged. Somebody tried to tell me that Jay Cargill just really ruined my whole opinion, which is kind of wrong because she was going to a wrestling school before she signed the AEW contract. She was at the Nightmare Factory learning. She was also learning from Daniel Bryan as well. So she had the foundation for what it takes to just do the moves, the fundamentals. So that means that she was a wrestler that was prepackaged that signed her contract for AEW. The major problem was that AEW did not care about how they looked on TV or even on the YouTube channel, or how their young wrestlers such as Jade and Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson and Griff Garrison. Even though Griff Garrison is still recovering and is injured, the point is that the wrestlers that I named had the fundamentals. So they knew what to do, but the lack of direction was AEW's fault. And then because of that lack of direction, it makes it look as if using those names can dismantle my observation about Tony Khan only signing wrestlers that are prepackaged. Because if Tony Khan cared, all of the names that I dropped would be stars, would be over, because he invested into them and made them unique. When you have wrestlers that are booking themselves and booking their stories, and Tony Khan just agreeing with it, or maybe really not agreeing with it, but agreeing with it and letting them do what they want to do, that is not him building stars. Tony Khan did not make MJF. MJF made himself on the indies, and then when he got to AEW, and then now he just does cringy stuff and try to say edgy promos, and there is a very disconnect with MJF and how he is presenting himself on AEW, that I'm like, where is that star power? You were well liked with the fans, you were doing great, but then now it seems like you're just going through the motions, relying on the same stuff. But again, MJF made MJF. Private Party made Private Party and then got squashed, and all the momentum is gone. And finally, they got the AEW Tag Team Championship titles, which is way too late. The Young Bucks are self-made. All the ex-WWE guys are self-made. There are other wrestlers that are gaining traction, but the observation still remains that Tony Khan looks for wrestlers that are already established. They know what they're doing. They don't need to direct them. They basically do what they want. And that is what I mean when Tony Khan signs wrestlers that need to come pre-packaged, because he's not going to do the legwork, because he does not care. This is his sandbox. This is his vanity project. And this is what he wants to do, while fans will tell me that he's just a fan and that he loves the business and he knows about the business. And most of the time when I read comments that are on my tweets, I'm going to tell you right now that if you are not contributing nothing new or a different perspective to the tweet that I have, I'm just probably going to ignore it or mute, especially if you're going hostile. Name calling such as dumbass or bitch shut the fuck up or anything else of that nature, and then also telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about without providing any extra evidence of proving this, that I don't know what I'm talking about, that might get a mute. But like, if you're going to call me names, that's going to get a block. Like, there is a way to communicate with somebody that you don't agree with their tweet. You can either not communicate, you could just keep it scrolling, or if you really want to have a good conversation to get more thoughts from me because you don't understand what I'm writing about, then ask it very nicely. Talk nicely. The other thing too is that fans don't like it when I say that Tony Khan has stolen talent from New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that's a perspective that nobody really wants to look at it that way, because they want Tony Khan to be this savior. But guess what? He's not the savior of professional wrestling. Sure, he came along in 2019 to fund AEW, All Elite Wrestling, and it's no longer elite. It's all WWE. It's all do whatever you want. It's all let shit hit the fan wrestling company. But he came in 2019 where we were seeing a digression, a fallback with WWE before WWE decided to make major improvements to the overall product and health of WWE. The fact is that Tony Khan has cultivated the sickos for so long, over a 5-year period. Now we're heading into year 6 when we hit 2025. He cultivated a sicko fan base that are rabid and that will basically kneel whenever Tony Khan says something, rather than trying to be like, bro, I know you book for us, but can you please have some storylines, some cohesion? Can wrestlers not go from Dynamite to Rampage to Collision? Can we not have Collision anymore? Your ratings are bad. Can we not have Rampage anymore? Your ratings are bad. Or maybe try to combine the two. Or maybe can you talk to Warner Brothers Discovery to put Rampage and Collision on different nights and different times, so that way maybe they could get a better rating? You know what's really sad is that it is reported that Sesame Street got canceled and Warner Brothers Discovery decided to keep AEW, where AEW is the most violent thing on TV, cable, whatever you want to call it. It's on my TV. That it is the most violent thing that is shown on TV and also on the pay-per-views. In 2024 and 2025, we don't need to see someone try to suffocate their colleague. We don't need to see attempted murders with poison, Jon Moxley. We don't need to see someone getting stabbed with a needle, Hangman. We don't need to see any of that kind of violence from 0 to 1,000, because nothing fits in the story. Nothing fits in the character that these wrestlers are trying so hard to get over, but they don't know the first thing about getting over. Maybe they do, and they're just playing dumb, and they think that everybody can read their minds, and that's how it translates from the TV to the fans. That's how it translates from the disconnect that people have when they are tweeting on Twitter about AEW. That this disconnect, that we're supposed to be mind readers and be so high IQ, because Jon Moxley thinks that everybody is high IQ, and he also thinks that the world is against him, when in reality, no one is against Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley has accomplished a lot in his life, in his career, and that is thanks to WWE. And it is okay to say thank you, WWE, even if you don't agree with what happened towards the end of your career. That shouldn't be the breaking point of the world is still against him. Which, by the way, somebody talk to him, because I am concerned for Jon Moxley, just so you know, because he has that mindset of that the world is against him. And that's why he says the most outlandish things about how to feel that adrenaline and how to feel alive. And that's by, just go listen to that promo that he cut, where Wheeler Yuta was looking at him like, bro, what did I sign up for? Because his mind is not there. And you could say that, oh, he's in character and it's kayfabe. No, it's concerning. It is concerning. So to wrap up this portion of the tweet is that fans need to stop defending Tony Khan and realizing that not everybody on the internet, in the IWC, the internet wrestling community, that not everybody is your enemy when you disagree with their opinion or their observation or the facts. Not everyone is your enemy. So relax, read it first, read the tweet over and over again until you understand it. If you are missing context, for you to truly understand what somebody is saying, just drop a nice question without name calling, without putting words into people's mouths to try to twist it to fit a narrative that this is what you want to hear, because everybody is different. We are all an individual. I don't understand why people nowadays want everything to be the same, because then it'll be very, very lackluster. Don't try to force other people to think like you, to agree with what you're thinking, because again, we're not mind readers. But at the same time, there's no need for trying to be hostile towards somebody that you may not agree with their tweet. At the same time, there is no need to be rude or sarcastic when you're not understanding the situation, or jump in a conversation where it has been ongoing if you're not reading above for extra context. Because when you jump into a middle of a conversation, it will make you look bad if you don't know what the subject is, but you want to add your 2 cents. Think before you tweet. That is what I would say. I comment on professional wrestling because I can see through the bullshit, and I will call out the bullshit. If you don't like me or others in the community calling out the bullshit, then you could just scroll on by. You can. Or you can also buy my merch, which is at Fourth Wall. All you will have to do is click the link down in the description, and this podcast episode is sponsored by my own link because I created new merchandise called Love You Solo, which is basically the solo cup and solo as well. You want to acknowledge your tribal chief? Well, you could do that with a solo cup. You could do that while wearing a hat and a hoodie during this cold winter season. I want you guys to stay warm. And if you are a fan like me who loves tea and hot cocoa and coffee, I do have Love You Solo mugs that are on sale right now, 15% off on my website over at Fourth Wall. I got candles. So if you want your house to smell great, like Solo, then make sure to get yourself a candle. And then also make sure to get yourself a notebook. If you ever want to write your thoughts down in a notebook, it helps with memory. It helps with the big feelings that you get when you're on Twitter and you're scrolling and you're angry for no reason. So if you want to get the Love You Solo notebook, you could definitely do that for 15% off. All you have to do is go down to the link in the description box, or head over to shop.fourthwall.com for all your Love You Solo Christmas merch. 50% off applied when checking out. So grab your Love You Solo merch today, which are hats, hoodies, candles, notebooks, you name it, we got it. Stay warm this winter, and also acknowledge that solo cup. Let's talk more about the phrase enjoy all wrestling. When the word tribalism and or tribalistic, depending on who you're trying to call tribalistic, when those words get thrown around so much over the course of 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, maybe a week, particular wrestlers will hop on Twitter to be enjoy all wrestling, guys. Enjoy all wrestling. I don't know why you're arguing. I don't know what's going on. I just logged in after 3 to 6 months of not doing shit on here to say enjoy all wrestling. And then the rah-rah speeches come through of AEW is the best. AEW has always taken care of me. AEW does no wrong. AEW this, Tony Khan this. Tony Khan is a swell guy. Tony Khan lets me do whatever the hell I want to do. So he is definitely A-okay in my book. Not my book specifically, but just making fun of the tweets that we see with the rah-rah speeches. Because when a man that has so much money that is flowing like water signs your checks, of course you would be like, yeah, they're all good to me, really good to me. While there are other instances and situations with evidence that they're not kind to everybody else. So just because a company is good to you doesn't mean that your coworkers are getting that same treatment. And I thought that AEW was all about treating people fair and with equality and just making sure that people are good. But it doesn't seem that way. Also, the dirt sheets don't help either because they stir up very hostile type of conversations, and they know what they do, so that way they can get their money's worth on Twitter. We all know it. We all can see through the bullshit that they don't help either by leaking out personal information, by leaking out stuff that is told to them without correctly vetting and making sure that that information is correct. They just throw it out there, and if people have a backlash to it, they don't even have accountability or recount it. That's not every one of the dirt sheets. There are others that would recount it to be like, sorry, we got our information wrong. Here is the new information that gets out there. But for the most part, they don't do that. But let's go back to enjoy all wrestling. We never say this for movies and food because myself and others have different tastes when it comes to food. But for some reason, wrestlers love to use the food analogy, the ice cream analogy of that there's vanilla and chocolate, and if we go 50-50, there are 50% of people that like chocolate, 50% of people that like vanilla, and then there is that gray area where you have the people that like both of them together, which is an option, which is an okay option. They could have that option the same way that there are different types of wrestling out there that we like. However, when you constantly have the same spots, the same high spots, the same no selling, the same let's kick out of a pile driver, let's kick out of a finisher, let's do our finisher 10 billion times, let's kick out of it, let's go to the top rope, let's do this suplex off the top rope, let me kick out, let me do all this diving luchador style, when that is all in every single match of AEW programming for the last 3.5 years. Where is the diversity to enjoy all wrestling when it comes to AEW when that was supposed to be different kinds of styles, different kind of ideologies? Because obviously Kenny has a different way of looking at professional wrestling. The Young Bucks have a super different way of looking at professional wrestling. Cody Rhodes has a different way of looking at professional wrestling. And when all of them were together, you knew that they were butting heads. No one really had to tell you that, but you can see it if you have eyes and if you are paying attention to the product and how it has fallen from 2019 all the way to now. And what I'm saying is that because of these ideologies, now it's just becoming one fluid motion of the same thing that we see. And somebody might be like, well, when Daniel Bryan was there, we got technical wrestling. When such and such is there, we get technical wrestling. They barely do technical wrestling. Because you want to know what technical wrestling is? It is a collar and elbow tie-up. Someone gets the advantage. Someone goes into a headlock right away. Someone tries to run to the ropes opposite of them, but they probably get stopped and like get down to one knee and there's still a headlock. Get back up. And then they do a snapmare, or they transition into a hammerlock, into a wrist lock, bring the guy down. Make sure to work on that guy's shoulder while having a tight grip on the wrist lock until the guy stands up, punches him in the stomach a little bit, pushes him to the ropes, push off into the ropes, do an Irish whip, and then also do another snapmare into a chokehold or some sort. And then continue on with chain wrestling. You're going to add some arm drags in there because that's part of chain wrestling. You're going to go for the feet to try to do some type of ankle hold because that's part of chain wrestling. That is technical wrestling. The best of the best were technical wrestlers. Ric Flair was the best technical wrestler. You had Dean Malenko. You also have others that are technical wrestlers. I love watching technical wrestling. I really, really do. That's the kind of wrestling that gets me excited. That's why I have tape study series where we get to break down professional wrestling matches, and maybe if wrestlers add a little bit more chain wrestling and technical wrestling and mix it up with the gymnastics and the spectacle of it, it will be a really good match, but you have to have psychology in it. My point being is that The few people that say that AEW has technical wrestling, they no longer do. Everybody is doing some type of high spot, some type of gymnastics, some type of springboard move. Everybody is doing a springboard cutter. Slow down. Stop doing a springboard cutter. Stop doing that. At least like slow down or something. But everybody in AEW has become just the same thing that we see. And that's why people are, again, not connecting with it. And then the more times that you tell fans to enjoy all wrestling, how dare you want something different from the product? And then if they do give us something different from the product, it's still off the mark. There is no connection if it is something different. The promos don't connect. The promos feel like they are inside jokes with everybody, but the fans don't know. For example, MJF talking about the tragic history and childhood that Roderick Strong dealt with. Now, I don't know if that was true, that MJF said that his parents end up getting shot. His mother shooting him. Again, I don't know if that's true. And even me saying that, I feel a little bit uncomfortable because it is not my place to really comment on something so personal as that for Roderick Strong. But to bring it up in a promo to try to be edgy, how is that going to connect with audiences? What was the thought process? And who agreed to have that be said? Even if Roderick Strong approved it or maybe didn't know or whatever the case may be, you do not sink that low to try to get a reaction by using someone's dead parents to sort of do this promo. That's why it felt like it was just an insider while trying to tell a story that most people are going to be like, oh, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to go near that. I don't want to hear anything of that because that is a tragic thing to go through if he went through that, if he did, because I do not know any background of it. I don't know any context of it. I don't remember WWE saying that. I don't remember him saying that. And when I say him, I mean Roderick Strong. So that is the other disconnect when it comes to AEW and their promos, that it feels like it's an inside sort of thing and not an audience kind of thing. It doesn't feel like I'm invited into the space of AEW when I see the clips. Even though I do not watch AEW, and you guys might get on me for that, but that's totally okay. I used to watch it. I was a day one AEW fan, but fell off because of everything that happened and all the baggage and no accountability. So I will say that as I watch the clips, because that gives me enough to know that nothing is really, really changing, that it feels like everything is an insider thing and not welcoming to get the casual fans back because there's nothing for us to connect with. Everything is either a 50-second promo, a minute and a half promo, depending on who's doing it. If you are a woman wrestler in AEW, you get like 50 seconds to a promo, which is sort of wrong because you can't fully develop your character in 50 seconds or your motivation in 50 seconds if the question takes up like 10 to 20 seconds. You don't get enough to tell the people why we should have a connection, an emotional connection, and why you should cheer for me. Here are my motivations, why I want to go for the championship title without being like, you attacked me last week. Like, oh my God, I want a title match because you attacked me. How dare you? But remember, we're supposed to enjoy all wrestling, even if we see the bullshit and the writing on the wall. The reason why I bring up the enjoy all wrestling phrase is because that is now being used and pushed as a way for some wrestlers and companies to disregard all kind of constructive criticism, because earlier I was talking about that because everyone has an opinion, everyone has a podcast, everyone has access to the internet and can definitely say whatever they want on Twitter. There are the bad apples that will forever be the bad apples and the trolls that will forever be the trolls, that they will say whatever they want without consequence, but you cannot group them into the group, so to speak, of the IWC that want to help, like myself and others that I know in the community, that our constructive criticisms should not be disregarded. And I was also explaining earlier that it is a way of how we phrase it that people can respond accordingly to it. There are things that I do that make sure that my content is very educational. So that way wrestlers and wrestling companies can improve and try to get that connection back. And I really wish that I can sort of still help that out and carve that path out, because it is not fair that some wrestlers that don't want to adapt, grow, and improve will automatically come on Twitter 3 months later, 6 months later, and be like, enjoy all wrestling, guys. Why are you guys arguing? You guys hate wrestling the most, and that's the fans, and point the fingers at the fans. While yes, the fans online can get very, very rowdy, because you could be very anonymous. You don't have to provide a photo of yourself. You can type away on your laptop, desktop, keyboard, phone, and say whatever you want. But there are people that have genuine interactions with others that will gladly show their face, that will gladly talk about professional wrestling, that will gladly have video conference calls. And you could tell that that's a real person. I'm a real person. Marie Shadows is a real person. This is what I'm getting at. It's just that there are wrestlers that want to have the life of being a wrestler, but at the same time sort of don't like it because of maybe the travel and the bump card and the social media. And social media can get very taxing. It can get very tiring. It can get very toxic. But if you listen to before in the episode of how you can combat that, you'll be so much better, so much happier. And if you work one-on-one with people who understand the business, myself included, it will be way much better than trying to listen to all the noise and try to filter it when you're not used to filtering it. I have been doing podcasting now for 5 years. In 2025, it'll be 6 years. I understand how to filter out the people that just want to say shit for the sake of saying shit and for engagement farming and basically being a bad apple and a bad troll, versus the people who I trust if I were to ever have a panel and have them on, because we agree on a majority of things. There might be things that we don't agree on, which is totally okay, but we don't pay attention to it. You know, you don't sweat the small stuff. But for the majority of the topics that I engage with other people, and also reading other people's tweets and seeing how knowledgeable it is with the evidence to back it up to support their claim, because we used to do that at one point in the United States of America in the classrooms. And if you're a 90s kid or an 80s kid, they teach you that if you're going to write a paper, you have to have your sources. You have to have something that can back up the claim of whatever you're writing about. But on social media, you don't really need to do that. You can say whatever you want. People take it as truth. People might take it as face value. And then when they ask you questions, to push back against it, because in their mind, that might be true, but here are some thoughts you may have not considered, or that may be true, but I need to ask these questions to make sure that it is the truth, because they do agree with it. But the moment that you want to refuse to provide that extra context, which may take a simple Google search, and please do not use the Google AI, because AI is not perfect and AI is just searching the web when you could do it yourself. And I'm not saying to go to the library to go get the encyclopedias, if you guys remember that. But it's the idea of that if someone pushes back, do not get upset at them. The same way that the wrestling fans are pushing back against AEW and everything that's happening, and why there's such an outcry is because that connection with the fans and the company and the wrestlers are not there. There are people that want to pretend and have that toxic positivity and be like, the wrestlers are awesome. The wrestlers are great. The wrestlers are great to me because you're there as a super fan, and not realizing that there's a lot of things that need to be worked on and improve. And that's not a bad thing. When you improve upon yourself and your life and the career it becomes way more fruitful than just taking praise, praise, praise. We all want praise, but that dopamine is going to run out. This is why you can't tell wrestling fans to enjoy all wrestling. By the way, you can't tell a person with an individual personality that stands out, because everybody is different. You can't tell somebody to enjoy all of this, enjoy all of that, enjoy all of this, enjoy all of that, because we were not meant to be put in a box to enjoy all of something. We are born with the ability to think for ourselves. And the moment that you fall into the trap of enjoy all of this, enjoy all of that, and you become a robot. You lose a sense of who you are. And as wrestling fans, we all have different tastes. We're never going to agree on everything. But the majority of us can agree that we want to be connected to the wrestlers and the characters that we see on screen, the same way that people can talk for hours and hours about their favorite TV show from HBO, their favorite TV show from the 90s, their favorite TV show from the 80s. And you hear the passion behind how they talk about the thing that they most love. And if we took it away by saying, hey, all of the 80s shows, you needed to enjoy all of it, well, there'll be a robot. The same way with all the 90s shows. Hey, you have to enjoy all the 90s shows. Well, there'll be a robot. The same thing with movies. You have to enjoy all movies across all genres. It does not matter. You cannot deviate from this, because if you do, you are a troll and you are a bad faith person and all the buzzwords in the world. So you have to enjoy all movies. No, sir, I will not do that. I will not enjoy all types of fandoms, because that is not me and that is not the wrestling community. The wrestling community is arguing and pushing back against the thing that is not being given to them. And I am not talking about dream matches. I'm talking about a consistent cohesiveness in stories about why they play out, and not hot-shotting stories in AEW. And also, we're pushing back against the fans that just want to see Tony Khan as a savior when Tony Khan doesn't even see you. You know what company sees people? MLW sees the fans. WWE sees the fans. Some indie promotions see the fans and they are very thankful for the fans. AEW saw the fans at one point, but Tony Khan just wants to book for himself and himself alone. And you can pinpoint exactly when that mindset changed. So for all the wrestlers and lingering toxic positivity fans that are hanging around Twitter, please stop telling the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community, to enjoy all wrestling. Stop that. Because I know that if we say enjoy all fandoms, you wouldn't like that, because you may not have an interest in all fandoms. And we are not supposed to be put in a box to be homogenous, meaning that everything is mixed together and there's no individuality and you're just a robot to comply to everything. We will not comply. Don't do that, because we are not meant to just enjoy all wrestling as wrestling fans. No, we're allowed to have our opinions, our observations, even sometimes people that say things out of pocket, because you cannot control somebody. You shouldn't control somebody, and you shouldn't control what they think, see, or hear. You can leave them on red and keep on scrolling, and then they'll realize that, oh, they might need to change up their act, or they might need to approach things in a different way. They got to learn on their own. But to just say a blanket statement of enjoy all wrestling, no. And if you treat professional wrestling like a hobby, when you come in and out and you take specific bookings because you also want to enjoy your life outside of wrestling, if you treat it as a hobby, do not tell us to enjoy all wrestling. There are professionals that are still doing professional wrestling. That's why it's called professional wrestling, that understand that social media could get crazy. Do they need to pay attention to social media? Not really, because they're getting paid to do what they love, and there is a difference, a reality check between what we see online, because online it cultivates the very worst, so to speak, if you look at it from another big picture. Like if we take a Venn diagram and we're looking at just one side of the Venn diagram, yes, I will say that looking at the big picture of social media, it does create this negativity, and it reinforces people around the world that negativity is a good thing, which it is not. I will say that again. Negativity is not, but for the sake of me explaining this, that the internet, social media reinforces people to think that negativity is the way to go. Therefore, they will be liked. Therefore, that dopamine rush will enter their body when they are being negative to somebody. And if somebody is going to be crying or something horrible happens or whatever the case may be, negativity against people is rewarded versus the positivity mixed with reality is not rewarded. When you try to be a very nice positive, not a toxic positivity person, when you're just generally nice and you want to highlight the good and you want to uplift the community, you are seen as a bad person. Versus if you are negative and you constantly bully somebody without proper reasoning for that action to happen, because sometimes life is weird. Everyone has different situations, and that is what I'm putting in here. But negativity and being a bully is praised more on social media than the other one, and that's very, very sad. Everybody knows that you could get a reaction out of saying the most heinous stuff, and that is what gets pushed into the algorithm. And that's what I want professional wrestlers to realize, is that social media rewards the negativity. The only way for positive stuff and uplifting to happen is if you have a Discord community, a Reddit community, a Substack community, a community off of Twitter, a community off of Blue Sky, a community off of somewhere where everyone is talking all together in real time, even like Facebook, a community off of that. And if you cultivate a community where we get to uplift each other, yeah, there might be arguments in there, but that community is not going to reward negativity and be seen as, oh, you're the cool guy. You're the cool person for being that negative. Even if the person doesn't believe in what they're saying when they put it out there and you know it's a negative tweet, they may not believe it. But because it's the internet, we can't really see what is true, what is not. We can to a certain degree, but that's a whole like another podcast episode and like technical stuff. But at face value, you might believe that person, whatever they say, they might believe it, but don't do that. Question everything. And I understand that was a really long explanation, but I could not find the simplest way to say it until maybe now, is that the internet rewards people for being bad versus for being uplifting and being positive and being an example of like, hey, you know, we're all human. I may have a bad day, but I still want to recognize A, B, C, and D of the wrestling community or something, even though some people might feel jealous of that because they didn't make the cut or whatever the case may be. But the idea is that anybody could be negative and that gets a fan reaction, that gets engagement going. But the moment that somebody is positive or showing off something that is cool and awesome, it doesn't really get the good traction that we need to get. And I think that's what happens when people just tune into a social media platform in like 3 months time, 6 months time, they've been away for it. And then they feel like it's toxic because of all the negativity that they see. That's because the algorithm knows that negativity is the way to go rather than positivity. That's why I say that if you move your community off those sites, you're able to control what gets talked about, what gets shared, what gets lifted, what gets a little bit of a spotlight. And this is what I like to do with the Square Circle podcast and all the shows that I do, if we want to call them shows. I have a particular show called Tape Study Series. The Tape Study Series is where I watch professional wrestling matches, whether they are given to me by my viewers, when I go live, or matches that I want to see and talk about and break it down. So class is always in session when it comes to the tape study series. What I do is reaction videos to the matches by pausing and stopping and talking about the significance of the moves and what they could mean and how a wrestler can benefit from working on a body part or trying to focus on something else, or the psychology, and making sure that fans have a better understanding and a more unique fondness for professional wrestling. I have looked at professional wrestlers and their matches. I have been given matches from indie wrestlers to watch and critique and give the feedback, and it has all been positive feedback to where it helped them out. So I will be bringing back tape study series in 2025, and if you want to be a part of it, if you are a professional wrestler that just wants a different type of feedback, thoughts outside the box, and even some constructive feedback, whether that is on a match or a promo or on both of them, I will be having more information about that if you want to join up with me and want me to help you with anything to improve on as a professional wrestler, because I love what I do and I want to make sure that you are the best and putting your best foot forward. And if the idea of going on social media to try to find that constructive criticism is sort of scary to you and you don't know where to go, I could just be the point of reference, because I will not use social media for that. I will definitely tell you directly and give you the feedback directly, either on your match, promo, or both. But again, I'll have more information about that in 2025. But if this excites you, that if you want to work with me to give you that feedback, just look out for the announcement. And yes, I do have samples on my Spotify, on YouTube, and also my wrestling newsletter, marieshadows.substack.com, where it is called Tape Study Series. And there are different kinds of wrestling matches that I go over. But for the most part, I do this because I'm very passionate about the business. I am very passionate about helping you reach your next goals and creating that connection with the audience and just thinking outside the box and making you the best wrestler that you can be. And with that being said, in 2025, we're going to be heading into year 6 for this podcast. And there will be another podcast episode talking about the ideas that I have for the podcast, what's changing, what's not changing, what's getting added, what's not getting added, and a roundup of 2024, closing out year 5, because 2025 is year 6. So look out for that. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please make sure to share it out with a friend. Sharing is caring, and that is the most easiest way for word of mouth to get the podcast out there, to get the ideas out there, the conversation out there. And if you further want to help out, you can click all the links in the box below. Make sure that you sign up to the wrestling newsletter, marieshadows.substack.com, because there's just extra content there, and there's going to be some changes with the Substack newsletter. Make sure that you are following the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast. That is where I go live. If you want to follow the Twitch channel, you can, twitch.tv/Marie_shadows. Every time that I go live, it is an educational live stream where we watch professional wrestling matches, where we talk about professional wrestling, where I talk about sometimes the news, not fully the news, but we have a good time nonetheless on the live streams. And if you want to buy the merch, remember to love your solo, head over to marieshadows-shop.fourthwall.com to make sure you stay warm for this winter season. If you have yet to follow the Spotify link to the Square Circle Podcast, please make sure that you do. The more follows, that's amazing. And then also, you will never miss a notification from me when I drop a brand new episode of the Square Circle Podcast live. However, I will reiterate that in 2025, things are going to be changing. It is year 6. And I love what I do. I love helping out professional wrestlers. I love helping out anybody that I can. And if you heard my MLW podcast previous to this, you understand that I truly, truly, truly love the business. I truly love helping people out. I truly love helping out the fans, the wrestlers, the talent, anywhere you need me. I am adaptable. But what I will not do is say, enjoy all wrestling just because. Enjoy what you want to enjoy. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. Complain about whatever you want to complain about, but also realize that the more you complain, that is the label that you're going to get. So the good thing that you can do is complain, but also write a thread about how things can improve rather than complaining about it. But I would never tell you to just conform to anything, because you are an individual, and I see you as an individual person, and I see you as a personality and as a human being that has free will, free thought, and you can make your own decisions, hopefully. But for the record, do not just enjoy all wrestling. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you guys on the next one.